Welcome to week 11. We've got a bunch of crazy start-sit decisions this week that we have to make. Ryan, I'm running a little bit behind this week. I've been doing some traveling and everything, so I got to. Ryan, I'm curious. Are you a crammer? Are you a procrastinator? Or are you somebody who's very prepared for like your tests and everything?
I'm very much the opposite. Yeah, I'm like whatever the opposite of a procrastinator is. Like I'm freaking out if I'm not prepared like multiple days ahead of time for
Yeah,
tests or whatever. I mean, the with this job, we're always kind of up against a deadline, so it
yeah.
feels like I'm always like, oh my god, I'm behind. But yeah, that's just kind of how I work. That's my personality.
That does not surprise me, and that's why we love to have Ryan Heath here, because I am once again behind. And so, anyway, I kind of pride myself on being able to cram, and I'm doing that before the show. And I'm like, some of these rankings are absolute lunacy, dude. Like, I've got AJ Brown like 24 spots below the consensus ranking, with some of the most random receivers you'll ever hear of ranked ahead of him. So I'm very excited to get into it. We're going to do some flex rankings today as well. And I just do want to shout out the chat. Yesterday, we had a really interactive show with the chat. We're doing our best to get to some of those questions. So if you have them, put them in, and we'll get to all that we can. But of course, I do need to hear from my guy Ryan with all these advanced matchup notes. So lots of good stuff at the end there for anybody playing DFS or trying to go a level deeper with some of the matchup specific stuff. So how are you doing, Ryan, heading into week 11? Do you feel like you've got a decent hold on this kind of crazy slate?
I feel like I have a decent one. Yeah, I feel like I know who the good plays are. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
that I'm like super far off of consensus, which is always a scary feeling for me. Like I like to be very away from consensus, feel like I'm unique. I don't totally feel like that this week though. So yeah, we'll get into it. We'll see as we get into some of these matchups. Maybe you'll see what I'm talking about.
So if you are even further behind than me, here's what I'm talking about when I say this week is crazy. Week 11 is just chaos. Vegas projects these offenses to score more points than the Detroit Lions, who just looked fantastic. Did not go three and out on a single drive with Dan Campbell calling plays last week. The Washington Commanders, the Arizona Cardinals, the Atlanta Falcons, the Houston Texans, all expected to score more points per Vegas than the Lions in Week 11, projected for more points than all of those offense. The Las Vegas Raiders. So shout out Jerry World. Did not really change anything in Vegas's mind going and making some of the trades that they did. We got the Cowboys coming out of the bye, and that's like one of the few spots that Vegas is projecting to be a big shootout. Raiders, Cowboys. Let's just keep going. Further up, above all the teams that I just mentioned, you've got the Miami Dolphins, ninth in implied points this week. The Vikings, seventh in implied points this week. The Pittsburgh Steelers, second, coming off of 10 points last week against the Chargers. And then below the lines, you'll find Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Denver Broncos, Jacksonville Jaguars, 23rd through 25th in implied points this week. So a very, very bizarre week. We've got a lot to dig into. Does anything there like really surprise you? Like I was surprised to see the Vikings as 3-point favorites over the Bears. That was probably the one that stood out the most to me.
Yeah, Vikings were definitely a big one to me. The Steelers being I'm always surprised anytime the Steelers are so heavily favored, and Vegas always ends up right on them. But yeah, that one definitely sticks out to me. Yeah, there's like a lot of these. Like I don't know. I don't know, totally know what to make of like this Seattle versus Los Angeles Rams game, either with a close spread with the Rams favored.
Neither does Vegas. They're just like, yeah, 3-point spread. They're exactly even. We'll just give the home team a 3-point spread and call it good because nobody knows what's going to happen. But we're all excited for it.
Yeah. But yeah, just lots of close spreads. There are like 5 games that all have the exact same 48.5 point over under too. Like it's very weird. It's a very weird week.
It is a weird week. All right, well, let's just get right to it with some running back rankings. Talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you see over here on the right side of the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see how high or low I am relative to consensus in terms of the Fantasy Pros expert consensus rankings. So I've got Jalen Warren at running back 8 with the Steelers implied for the second most points. By the way, shout out to the New England Patriots. Shout out to Ryan, big Patriots fan. First in implied points this week, standing alone at the top, but the Steelers are right behind them. So yeah, I've got Warren at RB8 ahead of Saquon Barkley, James Cook, Trevion Henderson, Rico Dowdle, and consensus tells me that that's wrong. Henderson is the only one that consensus has behind Warren. Does that look about right to you?
Yeah, no, I think it's very correct. Like you've got this Bengals defense where they're allowing the third most adjusted yards before contact per attempt. They're allowing the most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to opposing running backs by far over the season. Like 9 more fantasy points per game on average for running backs going against the Bengals. You've got Warren at least on the ground in this total bell cow role, 81% backfield carry share. So yeah, I think this is like the week to be extremely high on him. This is Jalen Warren week. I'm a little nervous where he's going to be popular in DFS just because the workload goes up and down sometimes with Kenny Gainwell in the passing game. But in a game they're favored, I just really like Warren. He's a really strong play this week.
All right, good stuff. What do you think about Travion against the Jets? Does that look about right to you? Do you have any read as a Patriots fan?
So Ramondre's ruled out. I am unsure if Terrell Jennings is playing.
Haven't
I
seen it
do
yet.
think that okay. I do think that matters. I do genuinely think that we would see Terrell Jennings at the goal line. Just from here, the other Jacob, my least favorite Jacob, Jacob Sanderson, told me I'm too close, I'm too into it. I can't like evaluate Travion fairly because I'm too invested as a Patriots fan. But I really do think this coaching staff values size above all else on inside runs and on goal line runs. So I do think if Jennings is active, he's getting the goal line stuff, unfortunately. But I think you're probably about right on Travion. Just as you said, with the very wide spread, Jets losing Quinnen Williams, even though Judkins didn't totally go off against them last week, like I think this is a spot where Henderson can be quite productive. I would probably flip him and Rico Dowdle if I'm nitpicking your rankings. But yeah, that would probably be my only feedback.
Yeah, so I've got Dowdle at 12, Henderson at 11. Let's flip it over to another rookie running back. That's Woody Marks. The chat wants to know, are we in on Woody? I am, tentatively. I've got him at running back 21. Consensus has him at 23. He's on the road against the Titans. The Texans still don't have a very big implied total, but they are about a touchdown favorite in this game. It obviously could be much more than that. Did you have some matchup thoughts on Woody here?
Yeah, I mean, Titans allowing the fourth most schedule adjusted fantasy points to opposing runners this year, fourth most adjusted yards before contact per attempt. The game script stuff is weird with Woody just because for a lot of the year he's been kind of more of like the scat back that they use when they're trailing, but he hit a season high carry share last week. I think he benefits from positive game script if he's on the field. 46% more fantasy points per snap while leading this year for Woody Marks. So yeah, I'm also in. I really like him. And yeah, I think you've got him appropriately ranked. I do want to say I want to be higher on RJ Harvey, but I just not even really for matchup reasons. I just can't. And it looks like you kind of agree having him as a back end RB2. My assumption is he does just take over most of the rushing workload, but I'm also not really expecting him to keep all of the passing stuff. I think Sean Payton could very easily just play Tyler Bidet almost entirely on the passing down stuff if he doesn't want to overload Harvey. So yeah, I would also co-sign you having Harvey a bit lower.
I'm terrified, man.
Makes sense, though. Yeah,
I've got to start him. I've got to start him in a few spots, and I'm terrified that they're going to fall behind in this game against the Chiefs. Chiefs coming off the bye, and then it's going to be like freaking 65% Tyler Bidet or something like that, just like him out there for the passing downs. Scares the crap out of me. But yeah, we've got a question about Harvey. We've got a question about Chase Brown and Aaron Jones, of course. We've got some flex questions. We're going to get to those later in the show. But I want to stay here and focus a little bit on this range. So I've got Aaron Jones and Chase Brown right after Kyron Williams, which is running back 13. That follows Travion and Rico Dowdle. So Jones is 14 and Chase Brown is 15. You would have Dowdle ahead of all of them, right? The Falcons have played the run pretty tough this year, but not so much lately.
Yeah, no, I really like Dowdle this week.
Okay.
Falcons' second most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to RBs over the past 5 weeks, top 10 in yards before contact per attempt allowed. The only concern with Dowdle is just in his losses going back to when he took over the Dallas Cowboys backfield last year, in losses, he's been around like 15 fantasy points per game. In wins, well over 20. He is more game script sensitive, as we saw last week when the Panthers just couldn't move the ball against the Saints and kind of got out of the game. So there is definitely like a concern there where, yeah, there's a version of this game where the Falcons are just constantly blitzing Bryce Young, who can do nothing against the blitz. The entire offense has to come down to Rico Dowdle again, and they can exploit that. But I think more than likely they succeed in running on the Falcons. So I would have Dowdle at least RB11 above Travion. Don't think you move him over James Cook, but yeah, that was my nitpick from earlier.
Okay. Yeah, I've got a good question here. One more before we do get into this mid RB2 range. It's about Travion Henderson and Saquon Barkley. So I have Barkley at running back 9, Henderson at 11. Is there a world, Thomas asks where I can start Hendy over Barkley? I feel like if you feel like you need access to more upside, you could go with Henderson because of the massive implied total for the Patriots. It is notably higher than the Eagles. To Ryan's point, he might not get that red zone work, so it might not even be him directly benefiting from them getting to the red zone and scoring a lot of touchdowns. But part of them scoring a lot of points could be him ripping off big plays, which we saw twice, almost 3 times last week. And this is one of the worst defenses, maybe the worst defense in the NFL. So would you agree? Would you co-sign that there's more ultimate hypothetical upside with Henderson than Barkley?
I don't think that I would, just
Okay.
because
it is Saquon Barkley after all.
Yeah, exactly. The argument for Henderson is, yeah, he can rip off multiple long runs, but this is very much like it could be a boat. It could be anything. It could even be Saquon Barkley.
Right.
It's like that's kind of his entire thing too. So yeah, I would still lean Barkley over Henderson. But yeah, I think in most lineups you would want to try to find a way to play both, as the chat has been pointing out.
Okay. I'll say you can start Henderson, so you can blame it on me if that goes terribly for you. Ryan wants to be more responsible here. He studies. He prepares for tests. All right. So Kyron Williams, running back 13. Aaron Jones, running back 14. Chase Brown, running back 15. Did you have any thoughts on them? I'm much higher on Aaron Jones. And that's mostly based off of usage notes recently have been really good for Jones, putting him up into this range. And then that, aligns with the matchup here as well. Does this look about right to you, or am I too high?
I think you're a touch high. I think I would flip him and Chase Brown just really for usage reasons. But yeah, I love Aaron Jones this week. I think you're very right to be high on him. The Bears have been vulnerable to running backs, especially through the air. 4th most schedule adjusted through the air to running backs. And Jones is at least a 12% target share in all 3 games. He hasn't gotten injured this year. Even on the ground, 2nd most adjusted yards before contact per attempt allowed. So yeah, love me some Aaron Jones. I just think Chase Brown, unless we get the surprise like full practice from Samaje Perine, I think we're just back into the Chase Brown with 90% of the Bengals backfield in that world, essentially. And whenever we're in that world, I want to rank Brown as close to an RB1 as I possibly can.
Yeah, makes sense. If he has that role, he's, easily, I think, like in the James Cook, Travion Henderson, Rico Dowdle range, and could push much higher. Depends on how the Steelers defense plays. They played better last week, I thought, especially like in the ground game, but we'll see. We'll see. They've definitely struggled at times. I love the receiving note on Aaron Jones against the Bears. I feel really good about starting him this week, if that's where you're at. So this range is a little bit dicier. It's Derrick Henry, Quinton Junkins, Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, DeAndre Swift. Those are the players I have ranked just ahead of Woody Marks. And then after Marks, it's like Kamani Vidal, RJ Harvey. So that gets us to this question. They need 2 players in half PPR between Breece Hall, Etienne, Henderson, and Harvey. For me, it would be Henderson and then Hall, but it's just a 1 spot difference between Hall and Etienne. Did you have any thoughts on this range here?
Hall scares me again, like in this matchup. Yeah, Patriots have really shut down the run. Not to do like the same Breece Hall rant on every single show I go on this week, but it's just absurd that they don't like throw him the ball. Like his only target last week, just the 42-yard house call. It's just they don't want to use him like they should. So yeah, I think I would go. Now I've already forgotten the other two players that were in the question, but I would go any of these guys you
ETN.
have ranked behind Hall. Yeah, I would prefer an ETN to Hall this week. I'd prefer a Swift or even a Marks to Hall this week.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Honestly, I could move ETN ahead of Brees Hall. They're pretty similar for me. All right. Do you have any thoughts on Kenneth Walker in this matchup against the Rams? I know on last week's Mastering Matchups with Max Toscano, he pointed towards the Rams as potentially a defense that might be brave enough to like really try to take away the pass and see if Seattle could beat them with the run. Did you find anything when you dug into this game?
Yeah, so that was kind of my starting point, and it's true for both the Rams and for the Seahawks. There was a clip going around of Mike McDonald today, kind of talking about this exact same thing, saying that he agrees with Greg Olson's analysis of basically that defenses need to stop taking the bait, shouldn't just match the personnel. You can defend the pass and make them actually run it on you when they go into heavy personnel. So because of that, because it's two teams that I think recognize this shift in the NFL meta, I kind of like the under in this game total. And I kind of think it could be more of like a grinded out running the ball style game, just because I think these coaches are like much more on to each other than any other defenses that they've been playing over the rest of the season. So yeah, I endorse like a higher ranking for a Ken Walker, for a Zach Charbonnet. I do think the Seahawks could be forced to the ground, and also the Rams have kind of invited teams to the ground this year. They're a top 3 run funnel. There you go, chat. By pass rate over expectation allowed this season. So yeah, teams generally choosing to run on them, even regardless of all this heavy personnel stuff. So yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to be a little higher on the Walkers, the Kyrans, just in terms of total volume this week.
Yeah, could be a shootout too. All right, we're going to take our first break. We'll get back with more running back start-sit decisions. There's some interesting lower-end guys that I want to get Ryan's thoughts on. Shout out Austin Lim in the chat. Has helped us with our fan-made intro. Very, very cool. Saying morning, fellas here. I love that people are popping in and saying morning because, like, to me, it's noon. To you, it's 1 p.m., right? Yeah, we've been up early, like working all this stuff, getting ready and everything. But Morden, hope you guys are vibing, having a good time. We're going to take our first break. We'll be right back.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. So even if you can't count on accurate expiration dates,
that is a rookie mistake,
or people appreciating your fashion sense,
Jim, the crowd is not on board here.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS, streaming on Paramount Plus.
Glad we wear our good jerseys.
Yeah.
Alrighty, we're back with more Week 11 running back start sits. So Kenneth Walker's where we left off at running back 24. So after that, it's tough sorting through these running backs. I've got Rachaad White next on the road against the Bills. But honestly, like you'll see here, I've got Sean Tucker much higher than consensus, and I'm a little bit lower than consensus on White. To me, like the Bills, you've been able to run at this team. Like the Chiefs struggled against them because they couldn't or wouldn't run the ball. But as we saw last week, you can definitely run at this team. And I definitely feel like it's realistic that we could get an outcome here where the Bucs lean on Tucker a lot. They've been prone to do that more and more lately. I feel like he, of the two, is more likely to find success in this spot. And has just been running harder, running better lately. Do you have any matchup-specific stuff on these two? Are you willing to roll the dice on Tucker as a flex option if you're desperate?
Yeah, so first I'll say it's a 5.5 point spread, which honestly, as far as Bills games go, not that bad of a spread. Like I do think the Bucs can stay in this game, and that's really what's most important for Tucker and also for running backs against the Bills in general. In the 5 games the Bills haven't won by multiple scores this year, they are allowing 26.9 fantasy points per game to opposing RB1s, which is just completely absurd. And of course, NFL's most extreme run funnel by pass rate over expectation allowed. So yeah, to your point, if the Buccaneers keep this game close in any sense, I do really like Sean Tucker. I think he is a sneaky flex option. I think you have him ranked pretty appropriately here. I guess my only other note to add is we did get Bucky Irving at a limited practice on Wednesday. I have no idea about injuries or anything that Todd Bowles says, so we genuinely will not know this until like Friday night at the latest, probably. But if we do get Bucky, I would be actually kind of excited to just like YOLO play him in DFS at 7K with nobody else wanting to play him in his first week back. Like that's just the scenario I'm dreaming of right now. But yeah, absent that, I do think Tucker makes sense, as you're saying.
All right, for the people who might have to make a start-sit decision on Bucky, where would he fall for you if we know that he's playing, don't know how much? In this range?
Probably just ahead of Derrick Henry for me.
Wow, okay. I was thinking almost more like DeAndre Swift, Woody Marks kind of range. Come on, Vidal. But you're above all of those players, you think?
Based on upside, I think so. Yeah. Just amazing workload over his first 4 games. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If he can handle it, if he can play, like I worry a little bit about being in game shape or whatever, like if he hasn't been taking hits, like how much they're going to want him out there for a full game. But if he can get even 12, 15 touches, that could be a ton of points in this matchup. Okay. Interesting. So if he's not playing, I think White or Tucker are guys you can go to if you're desperate. Some other running backs that I think have a similar outlook are like the Giants running backs, the Commanders running backs, a little bit lower, albeit. Kareem Hunt, like Blake Corum even. I'm much higher on Corum than consensus here. I feel like he's been running really well. I checked like the red zone splits to see if he's playing less than Kyron in the red zone relative to like the rest of the field, and that's not necessarily the case. He's gotten some red zone work. He just hasn't found the end zone. Do you have any thoughts on this ranking? It looks crazy.
Yeah, I think I would take Montgomery over him for sure. Just based on we just talked about that. The Rams have a higher total than the Lions this week, right? So yeah, maybe fair enough. I think Montgomery probably gets more than like the every third-ish drive that we're seeing from Corum. I think I'd probably knock Corum below Montgomery, below Tucker. But like the similar thing we were just talking about with Ken Walker and with Zach Charbonnet, where I do think it could just be a very run-heavy, grinded-out style game.
Okay. Below the Giants backs, below Kareem Hunt, below even Tyjae Spears and Bill Krosky-Merritt is where I have Tyler Algier, obviously coming off a great game and could be another similar type of game against Carolina. So he's in consideration. And then I wanted to end this with Kenneth Gainwell, Chris Rodriguez, and the Arizona running backs. I think any of them are in consideration. We don't know if Bam Knight's going to play. But if he does, I would have him and Amari Damercado just above Kenneth Gainwell and Rodriguez and Jordan Mason, Tyler Bidet, Tony Pollard, Nick Chubb, if you are considering using those players, but below Bill, Algier, Tyjae Spears. Do you have any lean on the Arizona running backs, or are you ready to move on here?
That's another rant I've done on every show. I hate how Arizona is using their backfield right now. Every single week, it's a different guy in the 2-minute drill and a different guy is the lead rusher. And DeMarcado is just better at all of it. And it's so annoying to watch and to break down every single week. But yeah, I'm with you. I would lean DeMarcado just because he's playing better. We have literally no idea what the roles are going to be week to week. So
yeah, the matchup is good. Like I feel like, one of these guys could be relevant. DeMarcado has definitely played better lately and gives you more big play upside. But to Ryan's point, like when Knight has been healthy at the beginning of games and stuff like that, they continue to go to him. Even this past week, even when DeMarcado had a huge game the week before that, it was Knight at the beginning of the game as the clear starter. He didn't play the fourth quarter, and that's when DeMarcado had that long run. But yep, I think either one of them are in play if you have to go there. Alrighty, let's real quick get into some. No, let's do flex. Let's do flex start sits here. So this is going to be tough, but we'll do our best. I'll show you my receiver ranks real quick because it is such a weird week at receiver. I have Jalen Waddle very, very high. Obviously, I think he's just locked in for anybody who has him. But he is, even above him on our St. Brown and players like that. This is the range where it starts to get interesting to me. It's like Ladd McConkey, Devontae Smith, Zay Flowers, Rome Odunze, Stephon Diggs are probably pretty much locked in. And then this range is just like, what do you do with any of these players? You got Wan'Dale Robinson with Jameis Winston, Tez Johnson. I feel like the Bills haven't really been able to cover anybody lately. other than the Chiefs. They locked them down. I don't know, like Luther Burden, I feel like could be a great start this week. Christian Watson, I feel like could be a great start this week. Like, this is such a weird range. I'll just open-ended, like, anybody stand out here to you?
Yeah, I've got notes on several of these guys.
Yeah.
We can start with Khalil Shakir.
Okay.
So I think this is like an ideal spot for Shakir. You have the Buccaneers blitzing at a top 5 rate in the NFL. Shakir has been very good against the blitz this year. 42% boost to his yards per out run, 41% boost to his fantasy points per out run. Kind of opens up the middle of the field, lets him get those yards after the catch that just gives him a little bit more upside, I think, than Shakir normally has. We are probably seeing Dalton Kincaid miss this game. And the Buccaneers also just funnel everything underneath. Second most receiving yards per game allowed on shallow throws. So in terms of where you have him, can you show me who you have above Jawan? I just want to see like how out over my skis I can get on Shakir here. I mean, you are 8 spots ahead of consensus. This is another classic case of we identified the same thing and I can't move the guy up any further. But yeah, good on you for having him high. Christian Watson, that's like, for those who don't know, I have quite a history with Christian Watson. One of my favorite players in the NFL, has basically only made me look stupid from a fantasy analysis perspective. But yeah, we're super back.
Great spot for Christian Watson and Dontavian Wicks this week.
It really is. Just stop me if you've heard it before. It's an amazing spot for Christian Watson and Dontavian Wicks. But I definitely prefer Watson of the two of them, and I do think he's like the legitimate kind of wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 borderline guy. So just to read off some stats, Giants play man coverage at the highest rate in the NFL. Over the past 2 seasons, Watson up at a 30% target per out run against man, over 3.4 yards per out run against man. That's like 88% and 49% higher than against zone. Giants giving up the 6th most yards per game to outside receivers, 5th most on the deep ball. And teams have actually been throwing against them. 6th highest pass rate over expectation allowed. And believe it or not, and it's hard to believe after watching that Monday night game, the Packers actually have posted a positive pass rate over expectation in the only 2 games they've played against like top 14 defenses by P-Row. So I do think they could actually like intentionally throw the ball a little bit earlier in the game against the Giants compared to what they've done the last couple weeks. So
to be clear, I just want to like clarify for people what you were saying there is they face a lot of defenses where the expectation based off the way the defense plays and the way that opponents have played against the defense is that runs are more likely. They face a lot of those defenses when they've faced a few that aren't that way. They have actually passed more than expected, right?
Yeah, exactly. They aired it out against the Steelers, against the Bengals. In those 2 matchups, they averaged like 310 passing yards per game. So there could actually be like production through the air that isn't like just during the panic 4th quarter. Oh my God, we haven't scored any points this game, like on Monday Night Football. But yeah, so I really like Watson. I would play him over a Luther Burden. I would play him over Jameson Williams. I would play him over a Tet McMillan, who I am worried about this week, both because the Panthers are just going to want to run the ball as much as possible, and also because, as I kind of alluded to earlier, Bryce Young has just been completely awful against the blitz this year, which the Falcons do the 2nd most of any team in the NFL. He's down at below a 40% highly accurate throw rate against the blitz. That's the worst of all 31 qualifying quarterbacks. So I am happy to play Watson over T-Mac this week. Don't think I'd boost him above Dobbs, but I would literally just have them back to back.
Yeah, T-Mac and Watson to me are similar types of plays where it's like, I don't know if there's going to be that much volume for them. There might be for Watson for some of the reasons that Ryan just outlined. But either one of them, it's like, if I'm starting them, I'm almost just kind of praying that we get a toss up to them on the sideline and they're able to come down with it and run. And that's why I'm more interested in T-Mac, because I think he's just a better player than Watson. And no disrespect, Ryan. I love Watson too. But it's like, if we get him in a spot here where it is the blitz, it's single high and all that, we could see some of this ridiculous talent amount to some big plays. But of course, it all does come down to Bryce Young, which is not something I'm very confident in. So if you want to move Watson ahead of him, that makes sense to me. What about Tez? Is this way too high for him?
I think it's a little high for him. I think Cade Otton is just functionally like the Buccaneers wide receiver 2 at this point. The Bills also have been much more vulnerable against opposing wide receiver 1s. This is a thing I recently started tracking, but if I can pull it up. So third most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receiver 1s, the Bills are allowing 20.4. So obviously Emeka Egbuka, just an amazing play. So I think it's really more, I don't even know off the top of my head what it is for the wide receiver in 2 and 3, but it's much lower. It's always like the top alpha guy going off against the Bills. So I don't know. I don't know if I'd go that high on Tez. Just
Watson over Tez?
Out targeted by Otton last week. I think so, honestly, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, we've got a question in the chat, of course, about AJ Brown. Nobody knows what the heck to do with AJ Brown. He
just told you to drop him, so maybe you should just listen to him.
AJ Brown did just say, don't trust me in fantasy. I am inclined to believe him. We're going to take our second break and get right back and figure out where the heck AJ Brown belongs in these ranks.
Only CBS Sports can bring you big time during the heart of Saturday afternoons. It's big time.
It's big time. It's big time. It's big time.
On CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Alrighty, we are back. Got some questions about Diggs or Devontae Adams. So I'll show the top of my wide receiver rankings again to anybody who missed that. But if you have any AJ Brown thoughts, I would love to hear it. And if not, you can talk through anybody who stands out to you in this range that we just looked at below Christian Watson.
Other than what I just said, which is that he thinks you should drop him, I really don't. Devontae Smith has just outplayed him, I would say, over most of the season. They are using Devontae Smith in kind of the role where you're actually moving him around the formation, using him in motion, where AJ is just out on an island. I think maybe he's a little frustrated by that based on his recent comments. So I think the gap in ranking you have makes sense. Just scroll down again. We can really stress test this on AJ Brown, maybe.
Devontae Smith is a wide receiver 17 in consensus, which is exactly where I have him. For some reason, AJ Brown is 16. That makes no sense to me. To be afraid that he would be above Devontae Smith. Devontae has been catching him, surpassing him, whatever you want to say, with the usage all year long. I mean, we know he's a really good player. This has been happening for 3 years, where he's slowly been catching up to AJ Brown in terms of first read target rates and all that. And now that he's done it, and AJ Brown seems clearly frustrated, it's he's 1 and AJ Brown's 2.
So I think I would move Brown up to wide receiver 35 above a Troy Franklin. I guess the reason I kind of narrow down that spot is just looking above him, Xavier Worthy, Jerry Jeudy. These are not the floor is the same as AJ Brown, which is essentially nothing, right? Brown, I think Brown is still a very good player. This is still maybe a shootout. Maybe the Lions push the Eagles a little bit. And the reason I would not go above Slayton is because I really like Slayton this week. We forget every single year Jameis Winston is so amazing for all of the pass catchers on his team. Winston's starting this week, and the matchup's really good. The Packers have allowed the 6th most schedule adjusted to opposing outside wide receivers, 5th fewest to the slot. We've seen Darius Slayton playing on the outside, of course, Wandale in the slot over the past 3 games. And even with him missing some time, getting knocked out early with injuries, more air yards, more receiving yards per game than Wandale over the past 3 weeks. So I think Slayton is kind of maybe more of a DFS thing, but he's definitely I agree. I think you should have him as a top 34 receiver like you do here. And I do think the median is maybe a bit higher than it is for AJ Brown. I know Slayton is injured in the chat also. This is all pending of course, his activity. But the
The
Giants
chat-
have like no receivers and haven't made any moves to add more receivers. So I'm a little worried, or I'm a little confused what they're doing if he's not going to play this week.
The chat asked Debo Samuel or Darius Slayton. I'm totally fine moving Slayton ahead of him.
Yeah, I am as well. Yeah, Debo's just has done essentially nothing with Marcus Mariota in any game with him. So yeah, I'm with you there.
There's definitely upside, like in that matchup. But I think there's upside for Slayton too. I mean, Jameis Winston, we've seen produce some absolutely insane catchable air yard even numbers over the past few years. And if we get one of those games while they're like trailing, chasing points against the Packers, I mean, Slayton could go off. I've got Slayton above the Denver receivers, above Parker Washington, above even Xavier Worthy in a tough spot, above AJ Brown, who we talked about. That's why you show up every Thursday and listen to Mastering Matchups, is so you can get your Darius Slayton stats. And on that note, Ryan has even crazier notes. I'm looking at what he sent me here. Beyond even Darius Slayton, we've got Calvin Austin notes this week. We've got Jalen Naylor notes this week. Please hit me with those.
Okay, Calvin Austin we'll start with. So the Bengals allowing the fourth most receiving yards per game to the slot. And another kind of feature of this Bengals defense is even though it's very beatable, very exploitable overall, they have just shut down opposing wide receiver ones, allowing just 12 DraftKings fantasy points per game to them. That's the fourth fewest, while they've allowed the sixth most to opposing wide receiver twos. Actually slightly more to wide receiver twos than to wide receiver ones. So that's obviously a benefit to Calvin Austin. Maybe you could argue Roman Wilson, but I'll take Calvin Austin, who's actually like running a full-time route share, running about half his routes from the slot where they've been most vulnerable. And he's actually out-targeted DK Metcalf in 3 of their last 5 games together. So I would have Austin much higher than wide receiver 53 this week. As we were just talking about, the Steelers have this massive implied total. I do think there's some actual upside in this spot. Austin is like a pretty fast, pretty explosive receiver, can rip off big plays. So he's, one of my grosser calls this week. And very similar, actually, is Jalen Naylor. So this one just comes down to the Bears have been very vulnerable in the slot as well this week, or this season. That has been basically regardless of the personnel changes they've made. Even Wandale still had like 11 targets last week, even with them trying to have CJ Gardner-Johnson shade down there a little bit more. So I am always happy to target slot receivers against the Bears. They're also top 5 in deep receiving yards per game allowed. Naylor more air yards than Jordan Addison over their last 2 games together with JJ McCarthy. So he's like probably not someone you're actually starting in like any reasonably sized like seasonal league, but just kind of a random little desperation flex that I think has some upside. It feels a little point chasey, I understand, but like all of these matchup indicators are just really great.
You got me, Ryan. We had to go outside of our top 50 receivers, but we found it. Here are the 2 that I did not have high enough. I wasn't on the same page with you. I've been exposed. I like it. I think those are both interesting notes. I love Calvin Austin. The note on him having more targets than DK Metcalf, and did you say 3 of the past 4 games together?
3 of their last 5 together.
3 out of the last 5. That's crazy. And as we mentioned at the top, the Steelers have the second highest implied total this week from Vegas. So great spot here against Cincinnati. And Calvin Austin is a baller, people. Don't sleep on Calvin Austin, as I clearly have been. Okay, let's do some flex start sit decisions here. Okay, so these are the fantasy pros. Just the system just like puts them in kind of randomly based off my wide receiver and running back rankings. So I haven't had time to go ahead and move these around. We'll just do that together. I want to start with like Aaron Jones and try to quickly move through these. To me, like he's not somebody you've been starting over some of these players, but I think this week you could. I think I would put him below Nico Collins and T. Higgins and probably George Pickens. Would you keep moving these receivers ahead of him, or does this look about right?
I'd move Adams ahead as well, but yeah, that's about where I would stop. That's exactly what I was going to say. T. Higgins and George Pickens in awesome spots this week.
All right, so then let's talk about like Devontae Smith. We've mentioned really loving everything we're seeing from him and a potential shootout there. Some of these receivers, Lad McConkey, Deacon Metcalf, Zay Flowers, Roma Dunze, feel pretty good about them. Would you move them up into this running back range with Henry, Judkins? Like, where's the line for those guys?
I think I would, yeah. These like running back gets gross kind of starting with Derrick Henry for me. I don't like Metcalf as much as you, just based on that last Calvin Austin note we talked about. But yeah, like the Henry, Judkins, Brees kind of like range is just very gross. Like it's like the toughest matchup for opposing running backs against the Browns. We saw the Ravens like totally air it out against them last time they played. Judkins and Brees Hall, like massive game script concerns for very game script sensitive running backs. So yeah, like all the receivers over them that you can get basically is where I would lean.
I'm pretty much always low on Metcalf, and this week I ended up not being that way. And I feel like it's because the implied total and the defense. It's like if ever there is a week where it doesn't matter that Metcalf's role is really flimsy, it's this one, right? Like if ever he's just going to go nuts and have like long plays, have touchdowns and stuff, it's this week. So that's where I'm at with him, is like if you need upside, I think he belongs in this range or even higher. If I was like looking just for upside, I would be totally fine starting him over Aaron Jones, over even this sounds crazy, but even somebody like Amon-Ra St. Brown or something like that. Definitely over Judkins and Brees Hall and players like that. I think it's mostly just a massive upside type of play. But if you feel like really good about your starting lineup, then yeah, sure, put Devontae Smith and Zay Flowers, put those guys in over him. I can get down with that. Stephon Diggs, do you think he belongs in this range of the running backs or up here even above Derrick Henry or Judkins, or is this about right for him?
I think that's probably about right. I'd probably move Vidal above him as well. I feel very good about Vidal this week. The thing there is that Jarrett Patterson is out of practice squad elevations. They have like literally nobody else, unless there's been another roster move or signing I've missed in the last 12 hours. But yeah, I think Vidal is just like safely locked into a big workload this week.
Okay, so I've got those two, him and Woody Marks, above Stephon Diggs, Juwan Jennings, Khalil Shakir, Wan'Dale Robinson. What about Harvey and Kenneth Walker? Nobody ever knows what to do with those guys. How are you feeling about them as flexes?
Yeah, I'd move Shakir over them based on what we just talked about. But yeah, after that, none of these guys get me to the point of wanting to play over a Harvey or over a Walker, I don't think.
All right.
Yeah, everyone, all these wide receivers are very like marginal, very boomer bust after that point.
Yeah, this is the range where we're at. So like Rachaad White, Monangai, do you think that they belong above Christian Watson, below Christian Watson?
I'd keep the two of those guys below Watson, but that honestly could just be bias. Like if you want to move them above him, I'm not going to argue.
Above Teteroa McMillan?
I mean, yeah, I view those two as basically the same as we talked about. So yeah.
Okay. And then we get to the, David Montgomery, Sean Tucker, Zach Charbonnet, Kareem Hunt, Blake Corum kind of guys. Are they like above the Denver receivers, Darius Slayton, some of these receivers we've talked about? Like, how do you sort that out?
I just have really rough vibes on the Denver game and all of that in general. Like it is two teams that want to throw the ball, two teams that are missing their running backs. Like there could be volume, but it's just two defenses that are very capable. So yeah, I think I'd keep, you had Slayton there. I'd probably go Slayton over kind of that range of like gross, like committee RB2s, but probably not the Denver guys.
Okay. So this looks about right then?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. Let's get to some actual questions from the chat on Start Sit. And I'll leave this up for anybody. Maybe this helps answer your questions. So what do we got here? Gadsden or Dobbs? Yeah, so I just kind of moved these tight ends down to get them out of the way, because I assume like if you've got one of these tight ends, you're just starting them for the most part. But that might not always be the case. Maybe you have Bowers and Gadsden or whatever because you hit on the waiver wire. So that's interesting. Like Gadsden or Dobbs in the flex. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd go Gadsden. Jaguars are the second best schedule adjusted matchup for opposing tight ends. I just think we didn't talk about that game much, but that's like an interesting game environment to me as well. Much like Jaguars Texans last week, where the Jaguars just invite every team to pass against them. They are very vulnerable deep as well. We've kind of seen Gadsden get downfield some. So yeah, I think the upside's actually pretty good. Probably even better than like a Wandale Robinson or than like a Kenneth Walker even. Like, yeah, I would have him pretty high in flex rankings this week.
Is this basically the line, like Juwan Jennings, Khalil Shakir, RJ Harvey?
I think so. Yeah. Once you get to actual like guaranteed volume wide receivers, like probably I would take the Jawans, the Shakirs over Gadsden.
Here's a crazy stat I found. Aranda Gadsden had the highest route win rate in the NFL in Week 10, ahead of all wide receivers. Of course, like he's going against he's not going against the number one cornerback that often, like some of the receivers are. But still, tight ends normally aren't that high in these win rates and separation scores. Like, he is a pretty unique player, and I just thought this was a fun way to illustrate that. And really, if you look at the Week 10 route win rates, dude, the Chargers freaking cooked the Steelers. So I think that is maybe notable for the Bengals, like, of course, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase are in your starting lineups, but maybe for DFS purposes or whatever. Okay, what else do we have here? Start sit questions. Flex one of these: Worthy, Parker Washington, or Troy Franklin. I think it's Parker Washington for me, but it might be Worthy. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So like my only note on Worthy is the Broncos play a lot more man, and that has very much been Worthy and Hollywood getting targeted against man coverage rather than Rashee Rice. So I sort of see the Worthy upside, but I think I would ultimately go with Parker Washington. Just he's been vacuuming up targets in the slot. He was at kind of different depending on charting sources and stuff with throwaways and everything, but he was above a 30% target share last week. He's been, I think, above 24% in like 4 of his 5 games that he's run more than half the routes, some stat like that was in the Everything report that any Fantasy Points subscribers can check out. So yeah, I like Washington the most of that trio.
Tell people about the Everything report if you are good with that. Just like spending a minute on that real quick, because it's really cool, and we haven't talked about it on the show.
Yeah, so myself and Scott Barrett, every single week, we sit down on Mondays and Tuesdays, and we just write up every single important like usage angle, every single important like league-wide schematic trend that's happening, just anything that's interesting, anything that matters for fantasy, anything that's changed in like any backfield or in any receiver usage. We put it into one extremely, extremely long article. We call it the Everything Report. Really, the goal of it is just if you only read one like piece of fantasy football content for the entire week, you can just read that on Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday night before setting waivers, and you'll be good. You'll know basically everything you need to that's happening in fantasy football in the NFL. So yeah, you can read that over on fantasypoints.com. Again, it's called the Everything Report, and that is available with even just a standard Fantasy Points sub, which is heavily discounted right now as we're in the second half of the season. So that's pretty easy to go pick up. Check it out. Again, promo code matchups15 for an additional 15% off any Fantasy Points subscription.
Heck yeah. All right, I want to ask you about Rashid Shaheed. We haven't talked about him in his new role in Seattle. Do you have any thoughts on him? The chat is curious. I've got him kind of low because he did play less than Cooper Kupp last week, but we could see that role grow. Do you have any thoughts there?
So he played, I think, was slightly less than Cooper Kupp overall, but interestingly in 1 and 2 receiver sets, of which there were only a handful because again this game was over super fast. Shaheed played as much as Jackson Smith and Jigba in the 1 and 2 wide receiver sets, so that was like an interesting kind of future bullish signal to me that maybe he is just going to be on the field the most once they get him like fully integrated. That was kind of what the coach speak after the game suggested too, that he is the wide receiver too. I don't know if it happens this week. We talked about I'm a little bit lower on this game environment overall. So I don't think I'd want him in starting lineups. I'd probably play him over Keon Coleman because it's Keon Coleman. But yeah, I don't think you need to play him over like legitimate wide receivers. But I'd be pretty excited if he were on my bench right now. Watching very closely.
Yeah, all right. That is an interesting note for sure. Let's finish up with a few more flex questions here, and we'll get to our quarterback and tight end rankings, and then we'll get out of here with all Ryan's advanced data. So Chase Brown or Jawan Jennings is an interesting one. I think it's pretty clearly Chase Brown for me.
Yeah, that's just an easy
yeah.
Chase Brown to me.
Okay. I feel like things are really going the right direction for Juwan lately, and the Niners could score a ton of points. But yeah, Brown is probably just the clearly better play on paper. What about this one? We need 2 running backs and a flex in half PPR. Rico would be at the top, and then Aaron Jones for me, and then I think it's Vidal based off of what I heard from you, but it's very close between him and Woody Marks.
Yeah, I would go Vidal. But
all these
I
guys
think
over
you're correct
Jawan
to have
Jennings.
them ranked back to back, and all of them over Jennings.
And Harvey would be the lowest.
Yep.
Alrighty. We've got Diggs or Higgins. I also have Henderson and May starting tonight. Are you comfortable just going all in on the Patriots? I think I clearly would. Wait, is this T. Higgins?
Yeah.
If it's T. Higgins, definitely T. Higgins. Sorry, I was thinking of Jaden Higgins because I'm a sicko.
Yeah, no, definitely T. Higgins if it's T. Higgins. Definitely Diggs if it's Jaden Higgins.
Yeah. Okay. 1 wide receiver, 1 flex between Dobbs, Debo, Aaron Jones, Tedero McMillan, and Kareem Hunt.
Aaron Jones is definitely the flex. And then I think you go Dobbs over McMillan. I think that's how we had it as well in the wide receiver rankings. But
Yep, full PPR. Yeah, I'll sign off on that. That's good. Half PPR, flex Devontae Smith, Kamani Vidal, Woody Marks. It's Devontae, I believe, even in half PPR. Where are we at? Yeah, yep, that's right. What are you good with that? I've got Woody below him.
yeah, I'm good with that. Devontae works.
Start 2, half PPR. Trey Tucker, I believe, Cortland Sutton, Parker Washington, and Ricky Pearsall. We don't need. Sorry, that's not a flex question. We've already done the receiver rankings. Okay. I wanted to get to the Theo Johnson questions. Keenan Allen, Sean Tucker, or Theo Johnson. I mostly just wanted to hear your thoughts on Theo Johnson because Dan really liked him. Here's another Sean Tucker or Theo Johnson question. Dan is a Giants guy. And of course, we got Jameis Winston potentially boosting things here. What do you think about Keenan Allen, Sean Tucker, or Theo Johnson?
Yeah, honestly, I had not given Theo Johnson much thought up until this very moment. I will say Jameis has never really been like a tight end guy, just in terms of tight end target share. Like David Njoku was kind of clearly the third option last year behind like the Jerry Jeudy's, Cedric Tillmans when they were all healthy. So I do think Jameis probably matters more for like the Darius Slaytons and the Wandales than Theo, but yeah, I mean, Theo's going to be out there every route. Keenan won't be, but when he is, they always throw to him. I think I would still lean Keenan in the flex here, but that is quite interesting. I might need to give Theo Johnson a little bit more thought heading into the weekend.
Yeah, I think there's a weird amount of upside with Theo Johnson is basically where I'm at. Let's do tight ends real quick, then I'll show you where I've got Theo. Tight end 10, Theo Johnson just behind Sam Laporta, who's still not practicing, Travis Kelce, Kate Otten, just ahead of Hunter Henry, Harold Fannin, Kyle Pitts, Dalton Schultz, Colson Loveland, and Luke Musgrave. Anything stand out to you from these tight end rankings?
I think you basically nailed it. I would want to flip like Fannin and Hunter Henry just based off of recent volume consistency. Totally get having Henry over him, given that implied total. He can definitely score multiple touchdowns this week. I'd feel a little better starting Fannin. Yeah, I think everyone down here, you're basically spot on. Just scroll up for me a little bit. We can go. Yeah, I think you're right to have Kate Otten high. I might have him even above Travis Kelce if I were to make another nitpick. And I think you're right on Theo Johnson just based on what we were talking about.
Do you have any Greg Dulcich thoughts? I have him and AJ Barner as like if I were to reach for upside at tight end in like a deep league, it would be those two. Just wanted to point that out to people because I don't think he's on the radar really.
I am so glad you asked about Greg Dulcich. Yeah, so guys, he ran a full-time route share. I believe it was the same number of routes as Jalen Waddle last week. basically just in the Darren Waller / Jonnu Smith role. Those two players have gone over 15 fantasy points. I was like 8 or 9 or 10 times over the past 2 seasons. Like there is legitimate upside here for Greg Dulcich rest of season. He is a great like tight end to stash on your bench right now that nobody's thinking or talking about. And the Dolphins have like a top 2 schedule for opposing tight ends for the rest of the season and for every position. The Dolphins have like the best schedule of any team for the rest of the year. So yeah, Dulcich, in terms of like starting him this week, I might go above like an AJ Barner. He's probably running more routes than AJ Barner this week. Probably wouldn't go over TJ Hawkinson, but yeah, I think you're right to call him out. I'm really glad you went there.
I think if you need upside, you could go above Hawkinson. You can go above Njoku, Zach Ertz even. Probably gives you more upside than Luke Musgrave. Yeah. Okay, let's flip it over and look at quarterback then. We had a few quarterback questions. People don't know what to do with Sam Darnold. I could not be more excited for this freaking game, dude. Sam Darnold startable this week and going forward, scared with a low passing volume. Of course, Darnold has played very, very well, but it hasn't been huge for fantasy necessarily. I've got him at QB 16 this week, above Jared Goff. We got a lot of questions about Goff as well, above Geno Smith in a great game environment against Dallas, above Tua in another potentially good game environment. What do you think about Darnold this week?
Yeah, damn, there's like some actually good quarterback starts this week. There's like a lot of good ones. Not as many buys, I suppose, but yeah, I do think it's hard to get him. I will say this week, I think maybe the volume could be there in terms of just this game will be close. It can definitely go the shootout direction. I don't think the Seahawks are dog walking the Rams. But yeah, I think you're right to stick with Rodgers like that. That's just an incredible matchup that he has, an incredible total. Even Goff, I'd be tempted to play over a Darnold, just kind of based on the aggression and everything we saw from Dan Campbell calling plays again last week. So yeah, maybe Goff over Darnold, but Darnold over Geno would make sense to me.
I'm going to say something crazy. I think the Seahawks are going to dog walk the Rams.
Okay.
I'm just going to call it out. Just be bold. I feel like this is the type of defense that could give Stafford some pressure. Problems? Do you have any thoughts on the matchup notes specifically for the Rams? Yeah, like not really, right?
Well, for Stafford, I do, and I also am kind of concerned here. So Seahawks play cover 4 and cover 6 at the second highest rate in the league. The Rams have basically had no answer for this year. So Stafford has tried to throw deep downfield into these shells, which is very hard. These are usually QBs are dinking and dunking and taking it underneath against those types of looks. Stafford's up at a 19% deep throw rate, like with Baker Mayfield, against cover 4 and cover 6. I do think that could lead to some interceptions, some mistakes potentially. Stafford's been amazing this year, but yeah, that like schematic note makes me a little bit scared. He's at just 0.28 fantasy points per drop back against cover 4 and cover 6. The Seahawks secondary is like a lot healthier than when Baker Mayfield was dog walking them again with that same type of matchup note. So yeah, I think that's also kind of goes into this could be like an uglier kind of grind it type of game, but I guess that can also go the direction of, Seahawks just have so many possessions and so many scoring opportunities. So yeah, Stafford scares me. I'll admit that. I would play I think this range of QBs might be where we have the most disagreements. I think JJ McCarthy is just like a top 10 quarterback this week.
Okay.
I think, or maybe top 11. I'd play Stafford over McCarthy, but I would have McCarthy above the Mariota, above Jordan Love.
I mean, the implied total is great. Vegas, like if they actually meet expectations there, McCarthy could be a big part of it for sure. I'm a little bit higher on Aaron Jones and the run game, but it could be McCarthy for sure. Did you have any thoughts on Flacco? People ask like Flacco or Stafford, and if we are maybe a little bit nervous about Stafford, could this be a spot to just like go with Joe and like expect lots of volume in the pass game? I mentioned like the Steelers secondary kind of struggled in their most recent game. What do you think about that?
There is like no like real analysis behind this outside of feeling. I just get so scared about Joe Flacco like in Pittsburgh with the spread that's like way higher than it ever feels like it should be anytime the Steelers are in Pittsburgh. But yeah, from like a matchup perspective, this should be a spot where Flacco throws a ton. It's what we saw in that Thursday night game a few weeks back. Steelers, one of the biggest pass funnels in the league, playing a ton of single high, which is very beneficial for all things Bengals, for Jamar Chase, for T. Higgins. We can go into that a little more in depth either right now or when we talk about DFS. So yeah, I get it if you need like upside, I think, to go Flacco over Stafford, but I median wise, I don't think I would rank him higher.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to close out with the quarterback rankings for anybody listening on audio, and then we are going to get into some DFS notes. So I've got Flacco at 14 behind JJ McCarthy, followed by Aaron Rodgers, Sam Darnold, Jared Goff, Geno Smith, Tua, Mac Jones, maybe Purdy's back. We'll see. Purdy would be about in this range. I don't know if he would even push that much higher than somebody like Geno this week. And then Jacoby Brissett. The guys who are below that I don't feel so great about are Bo Nix, Michael Penix, Justin Fields, Jameis Winston, etc. So you had a Jacoby Brissett note. You feel like he is going to be one of the most popular plays in DFS this week. Great matchup for sure against San Francisco and their depleted defense. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, he is, and I would play him over Aaron Rodgers for the record. Jacoby is like easily a top 15 quarterback to me this week. Diving into the matchup here. So the biggest feature of this 49ers defense, especially over the last handful of weeks since Fred Warner has been out, is that they are just allowing everything over the middle of the field in like kind of the short area. Like they are just not able to cover these tight ends, to cover these running backs with their current linebackers. And we've seen Jacoby Brissett really succeed in this area. Just on throws within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, Jacoby Brissett has the 4th highest passer rating, 6th most adjusted net yards per attempt, 2nd most fantasy points per drop back of any qualifying quarterback. That is just what the 49ers are going to allow the Cardinals to do this entire time. They're a top 5 on paper matchup for opposing quarterbacks over the past 5 weeks. Jacoby Brissett, very cheap in DFS. I do think he'll be one of the more popular plays, but I think that's probably just right. It is completely required that you play Trey McBride with him, with Marvin Harrison out this week with his appendicitis, which is just completely brutal. Just Marshawn loading him over here. But yeah, it's like an equally amazing matchup for McBride. 7.5 targets per game within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage in Brissett's 4 starts. That would rank behind only Jamar Chase this year among wide receivers. 49ers top 5 in target share, top 3 in receiving yards per game allowed to the slot. All of this just screams like Trey McBride nuke game, insane volume. He's like one of the, if he were a wide receiver, he would be the best wide receiver play on the slate. He's a tight end, the most expensive one. This is like I feel like I'm always just fading Trey McBride ownership, but I can't get enough of Trey McBride plus Jacoby Brissett this week. You'll have to find ways to get unique around it, but I think it's really worth playing some lineups like that.
All right. I love that. That is interesting. Like I was a little nervous this game might go under. But if Arizona holds up their side of the bargain, this could definitely be a really fantasy-friendly game. Do you have any thoughts on Purdy potentially being too low in these rankings? The chat says that I'm tripping here. I could definitely move him ahead of like Goff, but like I just have a tough time. I feel like quarterback's really strong this week, and so these quarterbacks that we like know are in rhythm right now and aren't like at risk of entering the game and then having to leave because their toe really hurts. Like I would rather start them, but there's definitely upside with Purdy and the Niners if this turns into a back and forth game because Brissett's able to really facilitate it.
Yeah, I'll say just on the game environment generally, both these teams are top 8 in total pace, so total plays per game. 49ers have a higher implied total than most of those quarterbacks that you just listed off, the Goffs, the Darnolds, not Aaron Rodgers, but yeah, quite a high implied total, top 5 on the main slate. So yeah, if it is Purdy, I would play him above a Goff, above a Darnold, probably. It feels like I should play him above Rodgers. I'll even say above Rodgers. I'm very much a Brock Purdy believer, though. I know that not everybody is as invested in Brock Purdy being really good as I am, but I think he's awesome, and I think this offense will be great when he comes back.
I'm right there with you, man. Brock Purdy is my Chris Olave. Like, it's the same guy. We just keep buying them. They're perpetually undervalued. If I know he's playing the whole game, he's probably even above Jordan Love, like in this type of range with McCarthy and those guys. We'll see. It's a good call. I wanted to bring that up just in case I was too low on him there. Okay. Any other DFS notes? I think the McBride stuff is really interesting. As I said earlier, I'm catching up. Is Brock Bowers on this slate?
No, that's the Monday night game.
That's Monday night.
Yeah,
okay.
McBride's just tight end is literally just like play McBride to me.
Right.
To me
I was going to say, if Bowers is on, it'd be really interesting if everybody's going to gravitate towards him. Okay. What else do you got? I'm going to look at tight end a little bit, see if I can come up with something interesting.
Okay, so just looking at Jamar Chase, he will also be one of the most popular plays on the slate, but I do think you can just go with the Joe Flacco, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins double, that there's a lot of upside in that. To like dig into the schematic matchup a little bit, and to me, like why I'm just willing to play him into ownership. Steelers play single high at a top 3 rate. They have never gone below a 51% rate of showing a single high look to their opponents in any individual game. Did it to the Bengals 57% of the time last time. And for context, the Bengals offense has seen single high at the lowest rate in the NFL, just below 39%. 5 out of their 8 games, it's been below 35%. Most teams just are not willing to play any sort of single high shell that can give like one-on-one opportunities on the outside to Chase and to Higgins. And the Steelers are just one of the most stubborn teams in the league in this sense. They're a team that has struggled at times against the pass this year. So, yeah, just really like the double here. Crazy stat, I guess, is that over the last 2 years in 8 games above a 55 single high rate, Chase averages 30.5 DraftKings fantasy points per game. Higgins at 16.8 over that same sample. So, yeah, like very clear lean to Chase. Like I play him naked. I want him in as many lineups as possible. Again, I'll try to get above the field, which I don't usually do with these chalky, expensive receivers. But I just think the spot is so insane for Chase. I guess my only other big matchup note that we haven't really talked about is going to be with JJ McCarthy. So
T. Higgins is crazy cheap.
Yeah, he is. That's
He's
why, like,
$6K compared to $5.9 for Cortland Sutton. Like, what?
Yeah, Higgins a great value.
Do you have data on playing them both together?
I don't. I probably will in advanced matchups. I like to stick that in and say like this is the percent of the time that whatever they hit 18 plus points together, that they're optimal together, or that they both hit it with Flacco together. So I will have that in advanced matchups for anyone that wants to read that or is curious, or you can go look it up yourself right now. But yeah, JJ McCarthy. So will also be one of the more popular QBs on the slate, just based on the implied total, based on his price being very cheap. I have not really been that into him as chalk the last couple weeks. I am this week. Reason for that, he has been handling pressure a lot better. I tweeted this out right before the show, but his pressure to sack rate, if you just look at it by game, it was at like 50% in week 1, went down to 40%, 30% his third game, just 4% against the Ravens last week, which is pretty absurd because they pressured him on 25 different dropbacks in that game. He only took 1 sack, which was nice. If you go back and watch the tape, he's like getting the ball out quicker. He's evading pressure successfully. The 1 sack was he was like trying to step up in the pocket and just kind of got squeezed. So I think that aspect of his game has improved a lot. It won't even matter as much against the Bears either, because they are one of the worst teams in the NFL just at getting pressure. And on dropbacks, McCarthy's been kept clean. I'm losing the number, but I think it's a 0.62 fantasy points per dropback. It's 7th best among slate eligible quarterbacks. Bears, as we've talked about, have just been kind of very up or down as a secondary all season, very vulnerable to the deep ball. And McCarthy's actually throwing it deep at a league high rate, 15.7% deep throw rate. So if things click together, if the Vikings receivers aren't constantly dropping the ball, if JJ can clean up his accuracy, which definitely does need work, I will 100% admit that and say that for him. I think this could turn into a shootout quite easily. And yeah, it's also just we've seen so much success with quarterbacks in this system with Kevin O'Connell. So I think you can obviously play him with Jefferson. You can play him with Naylor in DFS. He's only 3,500. You can play him even with Aaron Jones based on the passing game matchups that we talked about earlier in the running back section.
Super interesting stuff there. I feel like I'm curious what you think about this. If you're going with a McCarthy lineup or multiple McCarthy lineups, does it make sense to go out of your way to also build in leverage plays off of the McBride chalk? So then I guess it would be like somebody like Amari DeMarcado or something like that, where if McBride and Brissett aren't having this huge game, it's because of him, or is that just stretching it too thin and he's not a good play?
I think it depends. So on and I should say, I am not the DFS strategy game theory stuff, not my realm of expertise. I'm much more, I'll dig into the matchups, I'll give the player takes, but this is not my total area. But I'll say in terms of how I approach it, I think the bigger the slate is, the smaller the slate is, the more you should be thinking about leverage, or the heavier the chalky plays on the slate are, the more you should be thinking about leverage. This is a big slate. It's 11 games, but as I kind of just mentioned, there are a lot of very chalky pieces. Chase will be very popular. McBride will be very popular, as we talked about. So I don't know if there is great leverage though on McBride. One of the running backs is probably the closest thing to it. I don't think either of them are really great plays unless we see Bam Knight miss the game. I actually don't know what his practice status was yesterday, so that might be limited in play. But okay, so yeah, probably not. I don't know. I think the leverage on McBride is just if he doesn't easily outscore every other tight end, then he's very expensive and chalky, and you play any other tight end, you'll be better off. I mean, George Kittle could be leverage on McBride, I suppose. Definitely has that upside, but
it's Colston Loveland, dude. That's obviously insane because he didn't even have the role, but he's super cheap. And it's if JJ McCarthy is giving us this big game, then the Bears are more inclined to take to the air. And I feel like they've got to go to Loveland and Luther more. I don't know. Maybe that's just me wanting it to be a thing with Loveland, but I think just looking at him right now as I'm thinking about tight end, and I feel like that makes sense.
I think both of those guys are thin. I think it kind of makes sense. You need to play all chalk around them, basically, which that could enable if you're going. It
gets really easy to fit Jamar in.
Yeah, it gets easy to fit Jamar in. It gets easy. Yeah, it's maybe throw Jalen Naylor in too, that. That could be a construction that I go with this week, because it is very. That's something to think about, because it's a rare week where I feel like all the best plays are actually the most popular ones. So I want to find ways to get unique around it. Calvin Austin as the Steelers bring back is one way to do that, as we talked about earlier. So that's kind of the way I'm approaching the slate.
Sticking in the San Francisco-Arizona game, you had a Ricky Pearsall note, and that's somebody who I've talked about a lot in the chat, just relentlessly pushes back on Ricky Pearsall being a potentially good buy. I feel like there's still upside there for him. Do you think if he gets on the field this week that it could be a good spot for him?
I think it could be, yeah. I mean, we saw him drop 22.7 DraftKings fantasy points against the Cardinals last time he played them. Now, that was without Jawan Jennings and without George Kittle. but schematically, in theory at least, it's a very good matchup. He's been targeted 25% more often on a per route basis against cover 4 over his entire career. 23% target share against cover 4, ranks second on the team behind Christian McCaffrey over his 4 active games this year. Cardinals again play a lot of cover 4, so I think he's pretty interesting. I think he's $5K on the main slate, which is a little expensive, but he definitely has like the upside to be a DFS play, and he should absolutely be stashed on a bench right now in redrafts. Like the 49ers also have a much easier schedule over the rest of the season. I would be pretty happy to have a Pearsall there. I don't know when or if it's going to pop off or when it's going to happen, but I think it's a decent use of a bench spot, but I understand why people are frustrated.
They tell me he's not good, and it's like, okay, if you want to tell me that his knee's not good, like that it's not good, that he's like doesn't know what he's feeling in his knee and stuff, like I'll hear that out, but don't tell me he's not good. We have no proof that he's not good. He's been pretty good when he's given opportunities. All right, I see 2 more notes here. Let me know if I'm missing any. I see a Drake London note and a Quentin Johnston note, and we have a question about Quentin Johnston here, a flex question. So it's Harvey, Diggs, Tedero McMillan, and QJ. And I actually have QJ the lowest of those players here. But you had a QJ note. Do you think maybe I should move him up? Would you start him ahead of McMillan this week?
I would play him over McMillan. So that just to answer right off, I do think that's probably about where you should have him ranked. Maybe even over like a Tez or something. As I kind of mentioned earlier, this Chargers-Jaguars game is one I'm like intrigued by, in that it could be like a really good shootout. Like, but these are the top 2 teams by total pace this year. Both offenses very high in pass rate over expectation. Jaguars, huge pass funnel, all of that stuff. I just am having trouble identifying like one single play in the game that is amazing. But I do think you can make a case for Quentin Johnston. I mean, Jaguars second most schedule adjusted allowed to the outside, fewest to the slot. That obviously benefits QJ over Alad McConkey. Third most yards per game allowed on the deep ball. That at least earlier in the season was QJ. Now he's just kind of running like all these clear out go routes, which could turn into deep balls and could turn into busted coverages. So maybe like a better DFS play than a like seasonal median lineup type of play. But I do think he's interesting for those reasons.
Okay, good stuff. And then let's finish up with Drake London, unless you had anything else you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, Drake London, another guy that will probably be pretty popular. Not as popular as Jamar Chase, but I think he's just like clearly the best wide receiver play on the slate this weekend. Panthers play cover 3 at a top 3 rate. London being targeted on 40% of his routes against cover 3. That's behind only Jamar Chase and Puka Nacua. We've seen the Falcons kind of lean into the pass in the 4 games that Michael Penix has played since the bye. They're actually at a plus 3.8% pass rate over expectation, and that sample would be 8th most pass heavy over the full season. London is obviously producing insane over that stretch, 25.8 fantasy points per game, 20.1 expected. And the Panthers have allowed the 8th most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receiver ones this year, the most over the past 6 games. And they barely get any pressure, which has also been worth just a massive boost to London's per route efficiency. He's, again, just a top 3 receiver whenever Penix is kept clean. So I think he's really awesome. He's only priced in like the 7K range on the DFS slate. If he doesn't end up at like 20% ownership, he may end up being like my most rostered player this weekend.
Love it. Drake London has ascended. You love to see it. Maybe Darnell Mooney gets back in here as he gets healthier and healthier to close out the year. But I think London is just the man. He's a problem for opposing defenses, especially ones that are kind of more vanilla, like Carolina's. I've been trying to get him, man. Like we've got a dynasty team where we're trying to find one more piece. And I just basically anything short of like 3 first-round picks is like what I've been able to go up to for London as an offer. And this guy's just like, nah, like I can't trade him. Like I can't trade him for unknown. I know exactly what he is. And it's just like, it's very cool. Cause like you and I, as the advanced data people, like there's a lot of like compelling evidence that points towards a lot of these players being something, and it doesn't materialize for whatever reason. And sometimes it takes a long time. Sometimes it never does, you know? But in Drake London's case, like finally we've arrived where it's like all the per route data and everything, all the nerdy stuff that we love to dig into has been saying for a long time, this guy is one of the best players in the league on the offensive side of the football. And man, it's been such a good year for him. Alrighty, Ryan, great stuff today, my friend. Thank you for being here. Thank you for preparing, as always, much needed, because I am flying by the seat of my pants. I don't know if you heard, if you listen to Beyond the Box Score, but I went to see Steph Curry live in person for the first time in my life with my brother. We drove all the way to Oklahoma City, which is like 5 hours, no stops, there and back in basically a 24-hour period. And Steph Curry had one of the worst games of his career. And then the very next, he only played 20 minutes. He almost fouled out. He got the first flagrant foul of his career. Somebody in the chat pointed out to us. The very next day, he goes for 46 points. So that's funny.
Crazy, man. I was going to ask you where you had traveled to. Yeah, that's a fun story, at least. Yeah, as disappointing as that is.
Yeah, it was fun. That's something my brother will always remember for sure, even if it is just for the meme of going and watching one of the worst Curry games. Great stuff. All right, shout out the chat here. Love the interaction today. We've got a note here. Advanced Matchups is my favorite read each week. Hell yeah. Go check out Ryan's work. Ryan, let the people know where to find that if they don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Advanced Matchups, it comes out every Friday morning over on fantasypoints.com. You need the premium or all-in Fantasy Points subscription. That is heavily discounted right now because we are over halfway through the season. You can also use promo code MATCHUPS15 to get an additional 15% off any package over at Fantasy Points, also including potentially the Fantasy Points data suite, where basically all of the stats I have listed off today have come from Jacob uses very frequently. Just had an awesome video come out on our channel of Jacob walking through some of his favorite stats in the Fantasy Points data suite. So go check that out as well over on the Fantasy Points YouTube channel.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, you can watch me go into nerdy detail on everything that I love about the data suite. As for me, you know where to find it. Beyond the Box Score right here. Here's us, Ryan. I want to show you guys the most recent episodes that Dan and I have been working on. We did 10 mind-blowing stats. Flew maybe under the radar because it's not on our live tab where most of our stuff shows up. So go check that out if you didn't. And then also yesterday we did a complete like rest of season rankings deep dive. I'll of course provide that in the FFT newsletter as well. But that Thursday show is really, really good if you want to hear some of the why behind some of these rankings. All right. Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks producer Claire. This was a great show. Always love showing up for mastering matchups on Thursdays here to figure out some start sit decisions. Ryan, we read some listener reviews and questions yesterday, and we got some love for mastering matchups there, which you love to see. People have said that this has really helped them. Ryan has had some freaking phenomenal calls all week, and I've loved just showing up here to talk through everything, see if I can nail the players that Ryan's high on before he tells me about it. But yeah, thanks all of you guys for showing up. Good luck to everybody in week 11. Thanks for being here. Beyond the Box Score. See ya.